You have made it to week 6 of Lent. The resurrection is around the corner. So this is our last video in the series. We hope you have enjoyed it, that you've gotten something out of it. And this session is more of a wrap up, but hopefully we can think of some practical things to carry this tradition, to recover this tradition as it may. We put in one of our favorite quotes on the topic for today. I'm just going to go ahead and read. It's probably, knowing me, will be also printed in your question sheets, but so you can follow along. And it's about describing giving someone your full attention, the struggle of that. Sometimes when people knock at my door, I ask them in and we talk, but I make it clear to them in 1,000 small ways that I am busy, that I have other things to do. The door of my office is open, but the door of my heart is closed. So what ways do we communicate to people that they are interruptions?
That's a great question, Kira. And I think, or it's a great quote. And I think the question then for us, as we move forward out of this study is to ask, what are the ways that we sometimes think our doors are open, but our hearts are closed? And we want to get into talking about Wellshire really specifically a little bit because, how is the church offering hospitality to someone who's new, who walks in here? And are we sometimes unintentionally communicating that the door to our heart is closed? The church where I did my internship in seminary, the door was literally closed. And because it was a very small church, and the first Sunday that I went to worship, to help lead worship as an intern, I went right up to the front door and it was locked. And it took me a little while to realize, Sunday morning, the front door of the church was locked. And I had to walk all around to kind of figure out, knock, shake it, that everybody in the church went in the back door off of the alley because that's where the parking was. And I think it's such a metaphor for how sometimes we don't even realize our doors are shut. And so what are the things we do that we've always done that communicate that to someone who's new? Can we see our church through the eyes of someone new?
Yeah, on a pragmatic level, we've talked about hospitality, and I think most of you have applied that to your own personal life and maybe your home. We did sort of want to focus on the church a little bit in this closing video, and because hospitality is something we need to do to welcome our strangers. We have visitors every week, and the visitor experience is a little frightening. I mean, when you come here, you don't really know what you're going to get into. My own daughter just went through a search in Washington, D.C., and I talked to her every Sunday, and every church she visited had a different experience. It was very enlightening. Pastors just walk into a church and, we have a family already, so we don't have that kind of anxiety. But strangers are anxious when they get here, and how we receive them. I think, expanding our narthex is going to be a huge boon to our ability to welcome people, because the narthex before and after worship is often crowded with little cliques and friendship groups and backs turned to the doors and small doors, and I think this will give us literally a better place to welcome the stranger. But I do want to encourage all of you to speak to people you don't know. It's sometimes we only see our friends here on Sunday morning, and we're anxious to see those folks and catch up with them. But I do hope you'll consider the strangers and the visitors not interruptions in your schedule on Sunday morning, but it's one of the main reasons that you're here, is to welcome the people who we don't know. And that sometimes takes a little bit of courage and a little bit of art of conversation, knowing good open-ended questions like, how was your week, or what brings you here today, or have we met before, and giving them a chance to sort of share a little bit and see where that goes. So I hope all of you will be more sensitive to people you don't know on Sunday morning, and look out for those people, and consider that not an interruption to seeing your friends, but actually one of the main purposes of being in this community.
I think we often can treat people's interruptions at church or in life, but in the focus of church, in the things we do every Sunday in our rituals. I recently was on a continuing ed trip with a bunch of other pastors that I went to seminary with. And one of them, his fiance was with us, and bless her heart, she was the only non-pastor there. And so I sort of was curious about her experience, and I asked her about if they were visiting churches, because he's actually now in nonprofits and not a pastor, but they try to visit the church he came from, and they might still end up there, but she shared about one of the things that really bothered her was in their church during the passing of the peace. They had, we say, may the peace of Christ be with you and also with you. And then people sometimes talk, especially at the earlier service. But this church, they had like a longer thing that they said. It was like a few sentences, and then the other person was supposed to say a few sentences back. And so they said, now share the peace of Christ with your neighbor. And she turned and said, hi, I'm da-da-da-da. Like, we're visiting. And the person was like, you're doing it wrong. And she's like, ouch. I'm sorry.
I didn't know.
I don't know what, they could have, if they really wanted to teach them the rituals, said, oh, hi, I'm glad you're visiting. I'm so-and-so. Just so you know, this is what is happening here. I don't really know why we do it, but so you don't feel like an outsider.
Yeah.
But she was literally interrupting their ritual. Like, no, you're wrong. You're doing it wrong. And that just has stuck with me I don't know if anyone would really notice that until you're the outsider. Right. I'm just trying to think of different ways that we may do that without even realizing it. I'm sure that person was not trying to be rude.
Right.
They just got messed up out of their practices, and it's hard to identify those when you are not the stranger. So
yeah. Well, and I think one of the things that that our book and our study kind of gets towards is it takes practice. Mm-hmm. It takes practice to be welcoming, to show hospitality. It doesn't always come naturally, because there are challenges to our ritual, our time, those boundaries and limits that we talked about. And so just try. You can just try and just keep trying.
Yeah.
And it becomes part of the discipline, and it's part of the practice of worshiping God, of living a life of faith. So we encourage you to persevere and stay strong and find your own way to show hospitality.
One final story. One year for Lent, akin to hospitality, I decided my practice would be to speak to people on elevators. I'm a person who gets on an elevator, goes to the back, puts my head down, and rides up or down, gets off. And I decided when I get on the elevator, there's another person to strike up the conversation. And that was enlightening. It really was very interesting. I still do it sometimes. I've gone back to old patterns mostly, but perhaps when you come to church, you can make a resolution to speak to 3 people that you don't know, or 2 people that you don't know, and just decide that's what you're going to do when you come to church on Sunday morning. Even one would be fine, and just make a habit of that and see where that goes and how that works. Again, it's fun to see our friends, but but making room in our Sunday morning schedule for the stranger, I think, is imperative for us to be faithful as a church.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
See you on Easter.